Davao Metro Discom hostage crisis, an event that shook the history of the Philippines after prisoners hostage took the 15 members of the Protestant group known as the Joyful Assembly of Gods inside the jail in Davao Metro Discom, which during those times the group was only conducting a prayer service for the prisoners. One of those who led the hostage-taking was the one known as Felipe Pugoy and Muhammad Nazir Samparani, who was allegedly the leader of the group Wild Boys inside the Davao Penal Colony. But the said captivity led to brutality after the suspects mercilessly abused the female hostages, where heard from the very outside was the begging and screaming of these people every time they were being taken advantage of. A matter that, during those times, was also the first term of the then mayor of Davao, who was Rodrigo Duterte, who was the chairman of the Peace and Order Council in Region 11 during those times. Which is why immediately tested was the fierceness of Duterte regarding the threat to security in the city of Davao that he was holding. But the question, how did it actually reach the point that Duterte himself was also hostage took by the prisoners, and how did this event actually end, which became bloody and led to the deaths of 21 people? Before the bloody captivity happened in Davao Metro Discom on August 30, 1989, which was led by Felipe Pugoy and Muhammad Nazir Samparani, let us first look back at the events in the Davao Penal Colony 4 months ago before the said bloody hostage crisis happened. April 2, 1989, at the height of the first term of then Davao City Mayor Rodrigo Duterte, a jailbreak happened at the Davao Penal Colony, which was composed of 15 prisoners led by Felipe Pugoy and his fellow members of the Wild Boys gang of the Davao Penal Colony, or DIPCOL. In the said captivity, the prisoners immediately got outside after threatening the guards watching the gate that they would kill the hostages, where each one of the prisoners was carrying hostage civilians. After the said jailbreak, Felipe Pugoy and company immediately went far away using a jeepney and headed outside of Davao. But before the prisoners could even get out of the Davao region, they were blocked by the Philippine Constabulary, 120 kilometers from the Davao Penal Colony, through the order of Mayor Rodrigo Duterte. The demand of the group of Felipe Pugoy was that they be allowed to board an airplane heading to Manila to request from then-President Corazon Aquino their transfer from the Davao Penal Colony to the National Penitentiary in Muntinlupa, because allegedly of the abusiveness of the jail guards in the jail of Davao.
Felipe, ano unsa man jud inyong demand doy? Abi man ako. Ako ba jud? Pabalik kami sa kuan. Pabalik kami sa Muntinlupa.
But at the height of the negotiation, which was led by Mayor Duterte, who was the chairman of the Peace and Order Council of Region 11 during those times, it was found out that the prisoners had actually hostaged a baby who was already turning pale, and its life was in danger. A matter that made Duterte immediately present himself as a replacement for the release of the hostage baby, which was agreed upon by Felipe Pugoy and his companions. And as the negotiation progressed, Mayor Duterte also convinced the prisoners that he'd just be hostaged in his very own office in exchange for the release of those who were captured. And later on, 13 prisoners peacefully released their hostages, which was also followed by their surrender. But even if the 13 prisoners surrendered, Duterte was still held in his office by the remaining 2 prisoners who were Felipe Pugoy and Ricardo Navarro, along with 2 more teenage hostages. And because it seemed unlikely for the request of Felipe Pugoy to go to Manila to request from President Corazon Aquino their grievance to be transferred to happen, the last request of Pugoy was only to see his mother, which was immediately responded to by the military. And after responding to the request, Felipe Pugoy and Ricardo Navarro finally surrendered in exchange for the promise to transfer them to the National Penitentiary in Muntinlupa along with the other prisoners.
Istorya niya, hinahinay. Pag-ubot sa katulo, ako na may hostess nila, so kumpiyansa sila. Pahawa na itong ubang mga babae, 16 ka babae, tagsa sila. So minus nung dito may. Inyawan ako, paulian na lang. Natutar na naman ko, nagpa-hostage ako ko nimo. Sa ako pang. Sige, may istorya. Pagkadugag, istorya ko po yung siya nga. Kunya, surrender me. Di mo mapriso. O, dili mo mapriso. Masamayin ako, ingon ako, sikuri, pardon mo. Mga pilakaad daw, may hasta tong kaso na mo, murder ang kaso sa buang. Ay, naku, ko apel to. Ay, ulit sing wala. Istorya mo lang eh. No, sige mo. Sugot. Pag-iugot to, ganyan putang. Gusto niya makikistorya siya ginahan. Gipakuha na ko ang inahan nga rig sa Cebu. Pugoy. Gilupad nga to sa Air Force. Ang sugo sundalo ko ang to. O niya nag-istorya mi. Ki-release. Pag-release ingon sila, Mayor yung ano mo ha, pangako mo? Oo. Pag-sulod, nga putang ina, malata mo diha.
And after the surrender, they were immediately transferred from the Davao Penal Colony to the Davao Metro Discom, where their request to be transferred to Muntinlupa's no longer fulfilled because cases of kidnapping were filed against FAWI suspects by each victim. And because of the failed request of Pugoy and company to be transferred to the National Penitentiary, 4 months passed, and Pugoy once again hostage took civilians where, this time, the event became bloody. August 30 of the same year 1989, around 4:30 in the afternoon, Felipe Pugoy once again hostage took, but this time, he was already with a convicted sergeant of the Philippine Air Force, who was Nazir Samparani, and 14 prisoners, who were purely members of the Wild Dogs group of the Davao Penal Colony. Here, they hostaged a group of the Protestant Joyful Assembly of God, who were only conducting a prayer service inside the jail on those days. One of the main requests of Pugoy and company was to talk to then Congressman Ramon Mitra and Senator Neen Pimentel. But this was immediately rejected by the two officials for the reason that the situation was already being handled by the military negotiators. And this time, even if Mayor Duterte wanted to enter again to talk to Pugoy and his companions, he was stopped because it was already extremely dangerous and anger was allegedly brewing from them toward Mayor Duterte because of his promise that was not kept.
Ninyo lahat, papasok ako hostage. Sila nagsabi, wag. Sir, tagabi nagyaw-yaw yan. Kasi sabi mo raw na ipapardon mo sila right away within 1 week. Sabi mo nga, naniniwala pa na sila. Storya mo lang yan. You know, look guys, if you have a situation like that, you have to make deals. Of course, in bad faith. Ano mo ang librehin mo? Yung tao. The lives. Kaya nung earlier, sabi ko, sige, pardon ko. Akong bahala kay Presidente. Kaibigan ko yan. Hindi ko kaibigan si Kore.
And this time, just like before, the request of Pugoy and company was still to be transferred to the National Penitentiary in Muntinlupa. Here, Pugoy and company also immediately gave a 24-hour allowance to respond to their request. But the tragic part was that the prisoners had already abused the female hostages, where heard was each screaming and crying of these people. And upon the arrival of the second day of the hostage crisis, Pugoy once again extended the deadline of their request for the reason, also that according to authorities, they would still talk to the National for the fast transfer of Pugoy and his companions. Added also to the request of Pugoy and company was a safe passage and a bus that would allegedly be used by them upon leaving the jail. And upon the arrival of the night, the second day of the hostage-taking, the situation became even more of a calvary for the women when they were still mercilessly abused by the prisoners. The next morning, August 15, around 10:00 in the morning, the group of Pugoy attempted to escape outside the prison where they made each hostage a human shield. In the said scene, it can be seen that each prisoner had a hostage carry, where it can be seen that Pugoy was holding an Australian missionary identified as Jacqueline Hamill. And in the slow walking of these people outside the prison, Nazir Samparani fired a warning shot, which was immediately returned by the authorities, a matter that resulted in an exchange of bullets where Nazir Samparani immediately slumped down along with the hostage he was carrying. And because of this event, Pugoy and company immediately went back inside where they dragged the hostages, some of whom were already bloody because of the event. But only a few hours passed, and 2 hostages managed to escape, who immediately gave a statement on what the true condition of the hostages inside was. And because of the brutal treatment shown by the suspects to each victim, a few hours passed. Around 3:00 in the afternoon, the exchange of bullets happened again between the military and the prisoners, where the military showered the inside with tear gas, which resulted in Pugoy and his companions running outside, which is why here, the police gunned down each suspect, resulting in their deaths. Although all the suspects in the captivity were killed, also killed were 5 hostages, including the Australian missionary Jacqueline Hamill, who was still managed to be rushed to the hospital but later on also passed away. A matter that makes the 1989 Davao hostage crisis just one of the bloodiest hostage crises in the history of the Philippines that resulted in the loss of 21 lives, including the 16 suspects and 5 hostages.